The Invisible Factory: Why Modern Society is Creating More Toxic People. The toxic people destroying your peace aren't evil. They are biological hostages, and every day you are unknowingly absorbing their unhealed trauma, quietly suffocating your own spirit. But there is a radical psychological escape. Watch until the end to master the ultimate alchemy of emotional immunity. The introduction and the neurobiology of toxicity. Before the morning light even breaches your eyelids, you feel it. A phantom weight crushing your chest, an asphyxiating dread that has nothing to do with a lack of sleep and everything to do with a terrifying unspoken reality. You are waking up in a psychological war zone. We drag our bodies from the warmth of the bed and surrender ourselves to a hyper-connected, hyper-competitive slaughterhouse of the human spirit. By noon, we have endured and inflicted 1,000 invisible wounds. The venomous sarcasm from a colleague, the cold dismissal from a loved one, the tyrannical voice echoing relentlessly inside our own skulls. We are bleeding out emotionally, yet society demands we smile and act as if this daily mutilation is perfectly normal. It is not normal. We are suffocating inside a societal architecture deliberately designed to mass-produce cruelty and fracture the human soul. The inner multiverse warmly welcomes you to this deep excavation of the human condition. If you find yourself yearning to decipher the hidden psychological forces that govern our lives and strip away the illusions of modern existence, we urge you to subscribe to the channel right now. Your subscription is the vital pulse that supports our work, giving us the immense motivation to continue unearthing these profound, often uncomfortable truths in our future videos. To truly understand this epidemic of everyday cruelty and survive it, you must be willing to abandon a comfortable, scientifically illiterate lie. You must stop viewing toxicity as a pure manifestation of evil or an inherent moral failing. The grim, tragic truth is far more unsettling. When you look into the eyes of someone lashing out, a boss belittling a subordinate, a stranger screaming in gridlocked traffic, or a partner twisting the knife in a heated argument, you are not witnessing a villain. You are witnessing a biological hostage situation. Toxicity, at its absolute core, is the desperate, thrashing survival mechanism of a deeply panicked nervous system. The modern environment we have constructed traps the human animal in an endless loop of chronic stress. Our brains, ancient and primal, cannot distinguish between the existential terror of a stalking predator in the wild and the abstract terror of impending bankruptcy, social humiliation, or a missed deadline. To the brain, a threat is a threat. Consequently, it unleashes a biochemical flood of cortisol and adrenaline, locking the body in a perpetual, exhausting state of fight or flight. This chronic siege fundamentally dismantles our cognitive architecture. The prefrontal cortex, the evolutionary masterpiece that grants us empathy, rational deliberation, and the grace of impulse control, is violently starved of metabolic resources and shut down. In its place, the amygdala, our primal alarm bell, becomes hyperactivated and swollen with fear. The individual standing before you, dripping with malice and defensiveness, is quite literally operating with a hijacked mind. Their cruelty is not a choice born of free will. It is a heavy, impenetrable armor forged by a nervous system that tragically believes it is facing imminent annihilation. The architecture of projected pain. Understanding this biological hijacking forces us to confront an even darker mechanism at play: the way we unconsciously export our unhealed agony onto those around us. When the nervous system is overwhelmed by a perpetual state of perceived threat, the human psyche engages in a desperate maneuver of emotional displacement. We cannot bear the scalding weight of our own inadequacy, our buried shame, or our paralyzing fear of abandonment, so we frantically search for a vessel to carry it for us. This is the tragic architecture of projected pain. The person who belittles your accomplishments is not truly looking at you. They are staring into the terrifying mirror of their own unrealized potential and punishing you for the reflection. The partner who micromanages your every move is not obsessed with your flaws, but is wildly attempting to control the external environment because their internal landscape is a chaotic, ungovernable storm. We walk through the world bleeding on people who never cut us. It is a profound psychological tragedy that our most venomous behaviors are, in truth, warped, unrecognizable pleas for relief. When someone aims their toxicity at you, they are essentially trying to outsource their internal torment. By making you feel small, anxious, or fundamentally broken, they momentarily alleviate their own burden of smallness, anxiety, and brokenness. For a fleeting, intoxicating second, they feel powerful in a universe that usually makes them feel entirely powerless. But this transfer of suffering is an illusion. The relief never lasts, and the hollow victory only deepens the cavern of their own self-loathing, guaranteeing that they will need to strike again. To see this is to step outside the line of fire. It demands a radical shift in perception, moving away from taking offense and toward a quiet, steady observation of another human being's tragic unraveling. You begin to realize that the most cruel individuals you encounter are often the ones enduring the most horrific internal dialogue. They are entirely consumed by the very poison they are trying to spit at you. Recognizing this does not excuse the harm they cause. It is not a free pass for abuse, but it strips them of their godlike power over your self-worth. You are no longer the target of a calculated assassination of your character. You are merely a bystander who wandered into the splash zone of a soul at war with itself. This realization is the first crucial step toward emotional emancipation, allowing us to witness the screaming child hiding inside the hostile adult. We can look upon their cruelty not as a definitive judgment of our value, but as a deeply flawed, agonizingly human attempt to survive a mind that has turned against its host. The echo chambers of societal poison. Yet, this tragic individual projection does not occur in a vacuum. It is relentlessly amplified and weaponized by the very world we inhabit. We cannot discuss the mechanics of human toxicity without indicting the modern societal machinery that profits immensely from our collective dysregulation. We have built a civilization that treats the human nervous system not as a sacred instrument to be protected, but as an exploitable resource to be mined. We are citizens of a digital coliseum, a hyper-connected arena where outrage is the most valuable currency and empathy is a tactical disadvantage. Every algorithm, every news cycle, and every cultural milestone is meticulously engineered to keep us perpetually agitated, fiercely divided, and incredibly lonely. This environment serves as a hyper-incubator for toxic behavior. When we are constantly bombarded with curated images of perfection, unattainable milestones of success, and a pervasive narrative of scarcity, our primal fears of being left behind or deemed unworthy are endlessly triggered. We are taught to view our neighbors not as fellow travelers in this difficult human experience, but as direct competitors for finite resources, attention, and validation. This systemic conditioning slowly erodes the foundational pillars of community and mutual care, replacing them with a cold, transactional narcissism. Society effectively normalizes the casual cruelty of ghosting, the performative cruelty of public shaming, and the insidious cruelty of corporate exploitation, framing these acts as necessary strategies for survival and dominance in a dog-eat-dog world. The true horror of this societal poison is how invisible it has become. We swim in it so constantly that we mistake it for water. We justify our own toxic outbursts as setting standards or being brutally honest, blind to the fact that we are merely echoing the hostile frequencies of a culture that has lost its humanity. We are encouraged to build walls instead of bridges, to cancel instead of counsel, and to prioritize being right over being connected. This relentless echo chamber of hostility ensures that our collective trauma remains unhealed, passed back and forth across digital screens and boardroom tables like a dark communal inheritance. As long as we remain unconscious participants in this systemic architecture of cruelty, we will continue to be both the victims and the perpetrators of a silent, agonizing war. The toxicity we face daily is not just a collection of bad personalities. It is the natural byproduct of a society that has monetized the degradation of the human soul. The silent attrition of the empathic receiver. Caught in the crossfire of this systemic and interpersonal warfare are the quiet casualties, the ones forced to absorb the shrapnel of another's psychological explosion. If you are someone naturally endowed with a high degree of empathy, you do not just hear the harsh words of a toxic encounter, you physically ingest them. The silent attrition of the empathic receiver is one of the most agonizing, unspoken tragedies of the human experience. When you stand in the presence of someone actively projecting their unregulated pain, your mirror neurons, the very biological mechanism that allows you to connect and love deeply, betray you. Your nervous system attempts to synchronize with the dysregulated individual, pulling their chaotic frequency directly into your own body in a subconscious attempt to soothe them, to understand them, to fix them. This creates a profound physiological toll that extends far beyond hurt feelings. You absorb the cortisol spikes, the ambient tension, the heavy, suffocating atmosphere of their unacknowledged grief. Over time, this constant absorption begins to manifest as a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. It is the inexplicable brain fog that clouds your mornings, the chronic tension gripping your shoulder, and the sudden, overwhelming urge to isolate yourself in a dark, silent room just to scrape the energetic residue of others off your skin. We begin to lose the borders of our own identity, unable to tell where our own emotions end and the toxic radiation of our environment begins. We shrink ourselves, walking on eggshells and hyper-monitoring our own behavior to avoid triggering the volatility of those around us, effectively suffocating our own light to accommodate their darkness. The tragedy deepens when the empathic receiver begins to believe the projections. Repeated exposure to someone else's venomous narrative acts as a slow, steady brainwashing. You begin to question your own reality, internalizing the critique, the gaslighting, and the subtle manipulations until the tyrannical voice of the abuser replaces your own inner monologue. You become convinced that you are too sensitive, too demanding, or fundamentally unlovable. The very sensitivity that makes you a beautiful, deeply connected human being is turned into an open wound, ruthlessly exploited by those who desperately need a dumping ground for their shadows. This is the silent death of the spirit, a gradual fading of self-worth that happens so incrementally, so quietly, that you hardly notice you have become a ghost in your own life until there is almost nothing left to defend. The alchemy of boundaries and radical compassion. To survive this slow death, we must evolve beyond merely absorbing the blows, forging a new paradigm of defense that is as unyielding as it is profoundly humane. This brings us to the ultimate liberation, the alchemy of boundaries and radical compassion. A boundary is not, as popular culture often dictates, a wall of anger or an act of petty retaliation. It is a profound biological imperative. It is the declaration of sovereignty over your own nervous system. When you set a true boundary, you are fundamentally refusing to be the emotional landfill for someone else's unhealed trauma. You are stating, with terrifying clarity, that you will no longer participate in the shared delusion of their projection. But a boundary alone can easily turn into a cold, isolating fortress if it is not paired with radical compassion. Radical compassion is not the weak, enabling forgiveness that demands you stay in the line of fire and endure abuse. It is a high-level, almost detached, philosophical understanding of the human condition. It is the ability to look at the person attacking you and see the biological hostage situation playing out beneath their skin. You see the terrified amygdala, the crushing weight of their shadow, the societal poison they have ingested and are now vomiting back onto the world. You see their absolute, devastating lack of freedom. By seeing their toxicity as a tragic symptom of suffering rather than an accurate reflection of your worth, you neutralize the venom. The words may still be spoken, the actions may still occur, but the psychic hook no longer catches your flesh. This is where the true alchemy happens. You can look at someone with immense pity for the prison they are living in, while simultaneously turning your back and walking away from them. You do not owe anyone your sanity in exchange for their healing. True spiritual maturity is understanding that you cannot save another person by drowning with them. Your highest duty is to protect the sanctuary of your own mind, to keep your own prefrontal cortex online, and to fiercely guard your capacity for empathy so that it is not eroded into cynicism. When we master this delicate balance, when we can observe cruelty without absorbing it and walk away from it without losing our humanity, we commit the ultimate act of rebellion against a toxic world. We break the chain of generational and interpersonal trauma. We reclaim the narrative of our lives, stepping out of the psychological war zone and walking finally into the quiet, unassailable peace of our own sovereign truth. And finally, in synthesizing the intricate architecture of human toxicity, it becomes undeniably clear that the cruelty we encounter daily is rarely a reflection of our own inadequacies. It is instead a tragic projection of unresolved internal torment, relentlessly amplified by a societal machinery that profits from our collective dysregulation and isolation. For the naturally empathic receiver, absorbing this psychological shrapnel is a silent but devastating attrition that slowly erodes self-worth, drains physiological energy, and blurs the critical boundaries of individual identity. However, the path to true emotional emancipation does not lie in building cynical walls of bitterness, nor does it demand that we passively endure abuse in the name of unconditional empathy. The ultimate liberation is found in the alchemy of unwavering boundaries paired with radical compassion. By recognizing toxic behavior as a profound lack of inner freedom, a tragic symptom of a mind turned violently against its host, we strip it of its psychological hook. We learn the vital art of observing the suffering without absorbing the venom. In doing so, we consciously break the cyclical chain of interpersonal and generational trauma, refusing to become collateral damage in another person's unspoken war. Reclaiming our sovereign truth requires the highest form of psychological maturity, understanding that preserving our own peace and fiercely guarding our mental sanctuary is the most powerful humane act of rebellion against a dysregulated world. Profound lesson learned. The most damaging actions of others are not a definitive verdict on your value, but a desperate broadcast of their own hidden suffering. Empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. True spiritual and emotional maturity lies in understanding that you can hold deep compassion for someone's pain while simultaneously refusing to let their pain become your poison. How to apply this to your life? Observe, do not absorb. The next time you face unwarranted hostility, micromanagement, or criticism, mentally step out of the line of fire. Visualize their negativity as an external object that cannot penetrate your skin. Silently remind yourself, this is their storm, not my reality. Set sovereign boundaries. Stop trying to fix, heal, or over-explain yourself to chronically dysregulated individuals. Give yourself the absolute permission to calmly walk away from a toxic conversation, mute a draining contact, or step back from a harmful relationship. Your peace of mind is not a currency to be traded for someone else's comfort. Protect your nervous system. Intentionally step out of the societal poison. Limit your exposure to outrage-driven news and social media algorithms designed to make you feel anxious or inadequate. Create daily pockets of silence to scrape off the energetic residue of the world, ensuring your empathy remains a beautiful gift rather than an exploitable weakness. Join the conversation. What is one boundary you have successfully set recently that helped protect your mental peace? Please share your experience in the comments below. Your story and perspective might be exactly what someone else needs to read today to start their own healing journey. Support the channel. But once you begin to escape the prison inside your mind, something even stranger happens. You start seeing what most people refuse to see: the masks, the patterns, the shallow conversations, the invisible rules everyone follows without questioning. And suddenly, awareness does not feel like freedom anymore. It starts to feel like a curse. If you have ever felt too aware for the world around you, watch the next video. Deep Thinkers in a Shallow World, the Curse of Hyper-Awareness. Because sometimes, waking up is not the end of suffering. Sometimes, it is where the deeper loneliness begins. And if this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Not for easy motivation, but for the kind of self-awareness most people spend their entire lives avoiding.